If you're listening to this, there's a good chance you work within the real estate investing industry. There's another good chance that you would like to increase the sales of your products or services. Well, you're in the right place. United States Real Estate Investor is a platform you need to place your brand directly in front of your target audience. With our focused, growing audience of real estate investing beginners, enthusiasts, and seasoned professionals, you can continually reach our captivated viewers and listeners with ease. To learn more or to get started today, just visit UnitedStatesRealEstateInvestor.com/advertising. That's UnitedStatesRealEstateInvestor.com/advertising. Get ready to increase your brand awareness and your bottom line. Attract clients with content.
Welcome to This Month in Real Estate Investing, where we separate the noise from the news. I'm your host, James Brown, and I show people how they can make safe, secure returns through our pre-vetted passive investments. Feel free to download our ebook, The Astute Investor, the top 10 mistakes investors make and how to avoid them, or join our private investor club so you can get exclusive opportunity alerts that we don't advertise to the public. Just go to acceleratemycapital.com. In this episode, we're going to be breaking down a variety of real estate investing news items, including Blackstone executive shot, fund fallout, Trump order opens 401ks to crypto and real estate, and Ray Dalio warns against real estate in current economy. Don't forget, if you're watching live on YouTube, you can share your thoughts and questions during the show, and we can answer those. Let's go ahead and start the show. All right. Today we've got Dave Foster jumping in as a repeat guest, Scott Royal Smith, and we may have Eric Burns hopping in a little bit later. Dave, you want to start out and just let people know your background in investing, what types of investing you focus on, then Scott can jump in.
So I either did something really right or really, really wrong if you've invited me back. I don't know which. But yeah, I am an ADD infected real estate junkie. And that's really sums it up. I've dabbled in everything. But 25 years ago, I had an aha moment. And I realized that while it's true that you make your money in real estate when you buy, the old mantra, right? That actually the most important thing is how much you keep at the end. And that's when I started diving into tax code usage, in particular the 1031 exchange, and started spending my life using 1031 exchanges for my benefit and for the benefit of clients, helping them keep tax dollars working for themselves. So I do real estate, I live real estate, but I'm also a nerdish little accountant who likes to keep money in our pockets instead of giving it to the government.
Awesome. Thanks. Scott.
Yeah. So my name is Scott Royal Smith. I'm actually an attorney and real estate investor. I bought my first business and piece of real estate when I was actually in law school. It was a transmission and auto repair shop, which I rehabbed the building and the business and flipped it to graduate from law school without debt and continue to invest in real estate as I was working as an attorney. Made enough money doing that I had a soft retirement, and then figured out that there was a bunch of other problems with wealth around how do you do more advanced work with taxes, scaling your real estate, how to automate that with teams. And that's my company now, Royal Legal Solutions, which is a fractional family office for people making over $300K a year as household income.
Fantastic. Cool. And people can reach out to you guys at the end of the show. We'll have you share how they can contact you. Thanks again for coming back, guys. This is going to be awesome. Let's dive into the news. From the Texas Tribune, Texas Senate approves bill to protect Texans from real estate fraudsters. So they're talking about requiring county clerks to verify information, which you'd think that they already would have been doing, right?
Why would we ever think that it's important to identify who's recording a deed? I don't know.
Yeah, for something as big as a real estate transaction. It's crazy.
Yeah, this is one of those things where someone jumped up and said, hey, there ought to be a law, which is right. There ought to be something. The problem is every time you say there ought to be a law, then you find another reason to create another law on top of it. Something that could be solved very easily, right? With an ID.
Yeah.
I think to take it as like point and counterpoint on it, right? Is that like, I think everybody agrees, right? That we would say, well, we want transactions to be like safe and secure. Now, the question is we already have criminal penalties on the books though. It's already fraud. It's already criminal to create a fraudulent instrument. Right. So then the question in my mind says, well, what are we going to gather by creating like additional criminal penalties for something? Right. So like, why do we need it? Like, is it, I think a lot of times the one thing that bothers me is a lot of times when we start creating like legislation to be able to say, we're going to create legislation to increase penalties, but it's actually not going to solve the problem any better. So what did we actually get is we actually ended up like as a misdirection that happens. It says, we actually don't know what we're going to do to, whatever this underlying problem is. So we're just going to do something and that'll make all the people that are upset about it happy, but it didn't actually fix anything. Yeah. And to me, that's like the most annoying part of government. I'm a limited government guy. So like creating more laws to fix stuff for me, I'm like, well, is it really going to do anything?
Well, because every time you create a law, there's going to be people that are going to be finding ways around that. So if we already have enforcement in place, why not just use that? By the way, as you guys know, this is going through Florida now, that there's a move to make a Florida realtor's license a statutory ID for a regular transaction.
Yeah, wait, what do you mean? What does that mean?
So the Florida driver's license or the Florida realtor's license is going to count as a legal ID.
Oh, like your driver's license, you can substitute it.
The reason is because not everybody in Florida has a driver's license.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't know where all this ID, like any ID stuff will really go. Typically, whenever you create more restrictions, like if you create like voter identification, the GOP stuff is like, we want more voter ID, right? And it's always pushed upon the fact that it's like, well, if we have more identification and more barriers people have to go through, we're going to have more security, right? But anytime you increase security, you also displace people that are good actors, but don't meet the security requirements, right? So in these kinds of things, I think I don't know here, like how much of a difference that's going to make for, having people have ID for recording deeds and whatnot. But it does add like an extra piece now that everybody's gonna have to do at closing. And that means that there's extra stuff that has to get checked. So, it's a small thing, but particularly with people that are like low income or like elderly, people that are trying to like navigate the system. Otherwise, the more things that they have to do to be able to do the transaction, the more difficult it makes, right? For all of us that are like smart, capable, like business people or whatever, it's not gonna be a problem, right? But you start like a lot of things like, is there impacts on the fringes that we should be concerned about to like create another law to then have more penalties in place when we already have laws that have penalties for that kind of behavior? Why would we take extra steps to disenfranchise people? Call me a lawyer and a debater, but that's a stand I'll take on that point.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the next one from United States real estate investor. Manhattan executive shot dead. $53 billion Blackstone fund faces fallout shock. So this is the one we highlighted at the beginning. So Blackstone's executive Wesley LePatner was shot. I guess it said the shooter, Shane Tamura, a a former football player with documented mental illness, cited NFL-related trauma as his motive, which it's like, that's not a motive, right? Like he might have some issues going on, but that doesn't relate to like why he shot this guy. So that's kind of weird. But like in the article, they're talking about the investors all getting a little spooked and redemption requests, trying to get their money back out is becoming a problem because of that.
Do you think like they all just get spooked because the leadership, different leadership, right?
Yeah.
Right?
No one's steering the ship.
Yeah, right.
or somebody else is steering the ship. They don't know what's. Oh wait. That was a woman. Antonio says Leslie is a woman with a typically male's name. Interesting.
I think I don't want to make too much of a link of it, but the United Healthcare incident of a few months ago, very similar. You've got a high-level executive who is murdered, and there's a practical aspect, and then there's the overarching theme. The practical aspect is look what happened to United Healthcare over the last 3 months. They've come back pretty nicely, which just goes to show that if you're a multi-billion-dollar company, honestly, one executive is not going to make the company.
Yeah, good point.
But the overarching theme here, though, is why is this starting to happen? And I just kind of wonder, I don't know, Scott, there seems to be a growing divide. You already started talking about it in terms of ID and disenfranchisement. But if people are starting to feel disenfranchised and unable to affect their own lives, are they reaching out in anger? And these are the kind of things that start to happen? And if so, how do we prevent it before it becomes an epidemic?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think there is like a disenfranchisement that happens, but it's like, what does it mean when the populace starts killing off the oligarchs?
Exactly.
Right? Like, cause that's like what we're starting to see, right? And what do we get for it as news is saying like all these people are crazy, right? But what if they're actually not so crazy, right? Like, it's easy if you're the people that are like the ones that are trying to craft the narrative about what it is, to just be like, oh, these are just like random outliers of like crazy people that are targeting. But it's like, these are strange people to target, right? Like, but you're just targeting like the high profile ones. I think that, to me, that's the bigger underlying. I mean, one of the bigger like underlying points of what we're starting to see a lot now in the United States is what are we actually really finding out, right? Is we're finding out is that wages are stagnant. Inflation is actually much higher than anybody is actually talking about. All you got to do is walk to Walmart or go to McDonald's and see that your dollar drink is now $1.50 inside of like a year, right? And then you start looking at that and say, well, the wages aren't going up, and there's no real like relief on any of that front. So now all of a sudden, we're actually, the majority of America now is like much poorer, and we have and then there's massive problems that are happening where like the United States had a slip in its credit rating globally, is now having problems being able to maintain itself as a world reserve currency. So the ability to be able to essentially tax the world by being a world reserve currency and channel all of that money to us is also going away. And I think people are actually, they might not know about all of those downstream economic impacts, right? But what they are feeling is like a sense of hopelessness. That they actually can really change anything anymore. And then that's where you get this kind of behavior of who can you blame? Well, who can you go after? And it's like, well, the only people to go after are corporations. Whoever I identify as the head of the corporation seems to be the ones that people are like, if I attack that person, then that's the person that makes the most quote unquote sense to go after as the one that is responsible.
Yeah, sometimes it's people with manifestos. And absolutely, we could call them the crazies. But I think what we're starting to see are the upsurgence of those people who are feeling it inside their homes. Whether they've been denied health care, whether they've had a home foreclosed, whether they feel out of control. And none of this behavior is right. But what do you do when you feel absolutely hopeless and powerless. And you controlling the narrative, that was a great phrase, because that's exactly what it is. We are putting these people, the 1%, on a pedestal, and they're controlling the narrative. So if you don't have any control, you're going to go after who does, aren't you?
Yep.
And somehow we've got to bring our nation back to where it's a nation of finding solutions rather than seeking exits, I guess.
You know, just this just in, I guess he was aiming to shoot NFL officials in the same building, and so this was just a byproduct. So he wasn't. No one was after him, but it makes you think, though. Like Blackstone, they're kind of the big bad, fund affecting real estate, buying up single-family homes, turning them into rentals. They used to have a rent-to-own program through Home Partners, which is kind of a direct competitor with what I do. They actually just backed out of the market at the beginning of the year. I've got some speculations about why. I know there was a lot of upset people with that specific program. So Facebook group targeting them, and they're unhappy, been kicked out of their homes or whatever. A guy or a woman like this could be a target, so.
We're not going to solve the healthcare crisis today, but if this really was a situation of CTE, then again, that's a neglected health issue.
Yeah.
And if people can't get good healthcare, what are you going to do?
Right. Yeah, I just saw Anthem was shutting down like most of their programs in Colorado, where I am. They were leaving a couple, so somebody's going to get affected by that.
Yeah. And I'd be careful about like looking at what people are using as defense points for like what truth is, right? When we talk about like a CTE, for example, that's a criminal defense thing that I'd raise like as an attorney to say like my client's crazy because he got knocked on the head too many times. So you can't really hold him as accountable for shooting all of those people. Right. But the reality might be really different, right? About
where's
like,
the truth?
What's actually like happening, right?
Well, and how do we know that?
Yeah, you can't. Who's going to know that that's actually whatever it is, right? It's obviously something a lawyer made up, and that then they run with. But it's it's interesting, because like with highlight and withdrawals, well, something that somebody who's as powerful as Blackstone to have a huge amount of withdrawals happening like that, like it makes me wonder about if there's like some type of like systematic fragility inside of like the REIT pieces anyway, right? To say like, well, it's just one guy. We all know corporations hot swap people out. Is it just a short-term spook because you had a lot of faith in the one guy? Or is it some type of other issue that's causing people to spook like that? But who knows?
Well, that's a great point, because one thing we do know is that as you get later into a real estate market, your REITs struggle to continue to perform as well as they have early. So there could very well have been a bunch of people dissatisfied with the earnings at this part of the market cycle. So what are they going to do? Look for an excuse to exit.
Yeah.
And if the sky's falling, let me out.
Yeah. Could just be timing, not just that executive, right? And Blackstone's huge. They're in all sorts of stuff, real estate and other.
Blackstone, like one of the most powerful entities like in the country.
Yeah, in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, and like definitely like in the world, right? Like they're like in charge.
Yeah.
Of stuff, really.
If we go off air in 5 seconds, we'll know.
Yeah. So yeah, I like Dave's point to that though. It's like maybe it's just an excuse to exit, and it actually doesn't mean much besides just another example of people trying to find a reason to weasel out.
Yep. Yeah. Let's go to our next one. Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. Feds charge Milwaukee businessman with securities violations, defrauding investors. Joseph Nantoma allegedly defrauded investors through 3 companies that raised $1.9 million from 30 individuals, including 9 in Wisconsin. Let's see. He allegedly spent at least 80% of investor funds on personal expenses. There's That's not good. And then he misrepresented. Here's the big one. He misrepresented his portfolio, claiming 23 million in assets, while the ownership records only showed like $1 million. So he was defrauding them for sure. And it makes me wonder. It says many of the victims were members of the Nigerian American community. And not his last name, Nantoma. He's from Africa somewhere. But I'm wondering if he's like defrauding his own people, right? Like that's not nice. It's not nice to defraud anybody, but so his own countrymen, maybe. I don't know.
I suppose if you're trying to gain confidence, that's where you're going to go, is to people who know you the best.
Yeah, that's the easiest, right?
My initial reaction just wants to be, this is another case of, it's easy to say there ought to be a law, but the law already exists. And the real question in my mind is, what about these investors? What level of due diligence were they doing?
Yep.
It's awfully easy to give money to someone because you don't want to go through the due diligence, and then something happens that's a bad event, and it's not your fault. And I mean, if the guy's living high on the hog and doing all that stuff, yeah, throw the book at him.
Yep.
But there's ways to do that.
Yep.
But people should also take some personal responsibility. If it's all in one little area, how many people are going to look at those houses and wondering why the deed didn't show his name on it? Or wondering how come repairs haven't started on this house? I mean, there's a whole lot more to this story than it appears, but the guy was obviously a bad actor.
Yeah. I didn't dig into it to see if it was, 506B or C syndication. Like you said, there's rules around all that stuff. And so maybe he wasn't even doing that. He was doing like some kind of JV thing, just where he wasn't, under the thumb of the SEC. So, yeah. But if they're just private investors that aren't accredited, of course, they're not going to know the questions to ask, those due diligence kind of questions, but they should.
I think like what highlights a lot of it too is like there's just not a lot of education, I think, especially when you're looking at minority and immigrant communities, that there's not really anybody that really reaches out and teaches anybody about finance as much, especially as something like I work with, the average client that we work with in my company is typically making somewhere between like $300K to like 1.5 million a year. And then what I find is that they don't actually really truly understand syndications and like limited partnership interests, much less how to do like due diligence in that area. Like most people are actually just throwing money at the wall with stuff that they saw from marketing and like a good sales call and a slide deck, but they don't have like a lot of background on that. And these are our people, talking about like rich white dudes, and then that's as good as they're doing a lot of the time. Right. I think like they probably, maybe it's not in the same vein of like how risky it is to just invest with your Nigerian buddy who lives on the street. That's when you're in a Nigerian community, like maybe, but it's, the education isn't there. Like there's not the outreach and education on the financial side of things for people that are in those kind of communities and those kind of income brackets. It also doesn't really exist all that well for the vast scope of actually what we would consider people that are supposed to be educated, that are making these types of investments anyway. And, if we had all believed that there's going to be troubles in the stock market, like going forward with the way things are like shaping up on the economic side of things, that I think you're going to end up with like very potentially like a whole problem of like the emperor has no clothes. Like a ton of deals are going to pop because they had assumptions not based upon like those types of economic and financial conditions coming up. And then this question that we have here is like, how could anybody have done this? How could you have invested in this? Yeah. And we'll be looking at each other saying, oh shit, well, I guess we all got.
Well, and I'll add a demographic to what you just said, the youth in America as well. We are not bringing up our young people to be financially literate. And that it's going to have just as big an impact for decades going on. But they're very susceptible to, I love the dart throwing analogy, right? Every TikToker and influencer that comes along has a different idea on how you can make money or what happens when you put Mentos in Diet Coke. And we've somehow got to ferret the truth out and start to educate people.
Yep.
And actually, this is going to be interesting because I think there's a couple other news stories coming up that we're going to talk about that speak to this exact thing.
Yep. Yeah. That's our mission here, with this show and the United States Real Estate Investor platform is educate people. They're not getting this kind of stuff in school. So we believe, like you guys, it's needed. So in the chat, somebody said, I know a Nigerian guy, and he said that country is absolutely loaded with scammers, which is a big reason he left the country. So, I mean, we've all probably gotten the Nigerian prince emails, right? Like they're kind of known for targeting us. So that guy actually left his own country. So you would think that these Nigerian investors would already be kind of on the alert because they're aware of kind of that.
Yeah, I mean that's like getting like hustled by your like brother-in-law or something, though. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
You don't think that way when it's somebody you know.
Yeah.
But it's somebody you know, you're like, oh, like generally people are like this, but this guy's different.
Right. Yeah. Their family. Yeah. Well, so and to this. Oh, go ahead.
No, just kidding. I just it could be your wife, it could be anybody. But I was just making like a jaded 40-year-old joke. Don't worry about it.
He's such a young pup.
Just a baby.
You're not supposed to be so sad yet. Just wait.
So in the beginning of the show, I mentioned our Astute Investor ebook. So if you go to accelerate-my-capital.com, that talks about ways to do due diligence. So if you're looking at investing with somebody, follow that guide. So let's see. Let's go to the next article from WTOC 11. United States government sues Richmond Hill real estate developer for destroying Native American artifacts and human remains. So it said that more than 80,000 artifacts were mishandled and 3,000 were lost or discarded, while human remains were misplaced or improperly treated. I don't know what went on there, but so hopefully, are you hearing all the noise in the background?
Yeah, a little bit.
Is that Blackstone knocking on your door?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. You got the NFL. What's up, bro?
Yeah.
Put a couple of rounds to the door, and then I'm sure everybody will quiet down.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it won't come with other problems, but it'll definitely get you quiet.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So I got to tell you, I've got some sympathy for that developer.
Yeah.
Because the longest year of my life was the 3 days after my road crews dug up a body building a road in one of our subdivisions.
Oh.
And the pain is real because the very first thing that happens, everything's shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And then it starts sorting out. And our project was located right on the Oregon Trail, near a city, so it could have been anybody, anything. But the Native American tribes get involved, the government gets involved, the FBI gets involved, the State Bureau of Investigation gets involved, the local community gets involved, the architectural, historical entities get involved, and you are very seriously in danger of losing all of your work and the land in that project. It's a real fear. Now, fortunately for us, 3 days later, the state archaeologist came out, spent 5 minutes and said, oh yeah, it's a settler. How do you know? Because there were coffin nails around the skeleton.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that was the only way to tell. So we knew that it had been buried in a coffin. So it was not Native American. So we were free to go ahead.
Yeah.
But when you look at the massive bad things and contradictory advice and laws, how's that developer supposed to proceed? I mean, I heard from tons of people saying, dude, get the bulldozer going again and make sure that never happened. Well, that's equally wrong as well, isn't it? So he's torn between those voices in his ear and the voices of shut it down, give us the land, it's a burial ground. So mishandled according to what laws and statutes. It's, again, it's one of those things where I get the sentiment and we want to preserve culture, but sometimes there's an over amount of legislation and overstep that it causes real harm to you as the developer.
Yeah.
I got all the gray hair, every bit of it.
Yeah. I can't imagine like some of these big projects, how much money you're bleeding every hour, right? But when you're working on thin margins, that could just, you're done. Your whole company goes up. It's not just that project even, right? Like, interesting. Well, that's cool. I'm glad. Well, I'm not glad that you went through that pain, but I'm glad you had some feedback on that for the show.
Yeah, that one hit close to home. That was amazing.
Yeah. All right. Well, Scott, did you want to add something to that before we take a break?
I think what they should do is have something that's other than the court system to be able to, or some type of like streamlined legislation, you need some type of expedited legislation to be able to handle any of these type of like tribal issues, I think, with artifacts or mishandling the remains. Because it's balancing the interests, right? But you need something set aside. If you're going to say that we're going to show the respect to the Native Americans or to those people or any people about how we're going to treat like the remains, and we're going to say, cool, as a society, we're going to stand behind that. We're going to offer some level of respect, to that. Then also make it like workable by creating stuff that allows us to more expeditiously like move through the process if that pops up, than saying we need a multi-year court battle, right? I think of anything, what ends up happening more often than not is that a lot of the legislation actually gets created as like a feel good and like of a should that we should do, but it doesn't actually get worked on enough to make it really functional. So we're caught in like the place of people did enough so that they wouldn't feel bad, but they didn't do enough so that way it would actually work well.
Interesting. Cool. Well, hey, let's take a break to learn from one of our partners.
Are you worried about where your money is headed in today's unpredictable market? At Accelerated Capital, their investors tell them that safety and security are their highest priorities. They want to wake up every day knowing their hard-earned money is working hard for them. In the best interest of their investors, Accelerated Capital carefully vets every opportunity, knowing that most of their investors want to avoid risky strategies and stick with more boring but proven asset classes and strategies. Accelerated Capital's team of seasoned real estate experts and financial strategists value long-term relationships and transparency. They're also there to help investors find a fit for their own personal goals. Accelerated Capital has options for both accredited and non-accredited investors at any stage of their investing journey. Visit AccelerateMyCapital.com to download a free copy of The Astute Investor and join their Legacy Wealth Collective private investor club. Or click Schedule a Call to book a short Capital Accelerator call today. To get started, visit Accelerated Capital at AccelerateMyCapital.com. That's AccelerateMyCapital.com. Accelerated Capital. Accelerate your wealth with alternative investments.
Okay, we're back from CNBC. What the end of Energy Star could mean for commercial real estate. Looks like there's potential elimination of the whole Energy Star program as part of the EPA budget cuts. I don't really know anything about how that all works. Do you guys?
Well, Energy Star crosses across real estate into all sorts of things like appliances and equipment and stuff.
Yeah.
There's all Energy Star and much of that as well. So it's really all about energy efficiency. I'm wondering, I'm not that deep into it myself, but the whole LEED certification, green building, and the attempt to quantify that is what's going to become difficult, because you're going to have a builder now who's going to say, well, my building that I'm going to sell to you is this efficient. And it could be the Wild West again. Without standards, what does that mean from them? So, again, it's one of those things where, honestly, in a very free and flexible market, it'll sort itself out. The builders are not going to be allowed, they're not going to sell bad buildings that are leaking energy for very long before they're caught. But we keep coming back to this theme of layer upon layer of legislation and control and regulation. And it's just, sometimes it's best to let the market go, sort the bad actors out, get rid of them.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that. Like, it's not like they're being forced to implement all these things, but it's a guideline to help them build value into their commercial properties, both for operational efficiencies as well as when they go to sell. They can
And
sell.
so why is it my responsibility to pay taxes so you can build equity in the building that you're going to sell? I kind of actually, it's the Wild West, but you got to love what Trump's doing, taking percentages of a company, if, in exchange for allowing them to produce or sell in certain markets. Hey, why not? If you're going to make money off of it, maybe the American people get a piece of it.
Yeah.
But to pay that kind of money for a program that was solely voluntary and for their benefit doesn't seem very wise.
Is that what we really want? I mean, to that point though, I know this is a little offshoot of like for Energy Star, right? But like Dave, you brought up the point about saying like, hey, they get like a piece of the company, right? And they got like a chunk of it, right? And like, to me, like it's an interesting argument. I was a Hillsdale graduate, right? So I don't know if you guys know about Hillsdale College, but it's probably one of the most conservative colleges in the United States. Like you go in there taking like Eastern and Western heritage classes. You have a whole semester on the Constitution, political science, like those types of things, right? And I always wonder about the fact as that it seems to me like, and it's like, if you went to like libertarian and conservative, it's tough to beat like the hard lines that Hillsdale runs, right? And I was always under the impression that like the GOP and Republican sector of like thinking was always about like really small government, right? And to me, it's a really a big shift, right? Because like from what the line that Dave is saying is like, hey, why not, right? Why not get a piece or whatever? Because that's actually the opposite of what small government is. That's actually socialism.
Absolutely.
Socialism is what runs when it says the government is going to also, or communism, also own all of the industries. And it's wild to me actually to hear from my like GOP friends like in here, right? That are like, oh no, we like that Trump did that. And it's like, okay, that's really wild because I thought you were also against these other ideologies about like a government that's super controlling. And I think there's like a flip that's happening ideologically that I actually don't know where to place about who's going to believe what anymore. I have no idea how to predict what's going to come, the next thing that's going to come out of anybody's mouth, because it's like scattershot to the wind of it. So, I guess my question to is this the country we really want to move forward with, where the people that are making the rules and the regulatory rules are also able to come in and tell companies that like, hey, you need to give us some ownership of your company. And if they don't agree to it, then what?
Well, and here's where the flame mail starts, because take that one step further and say, well, what's the reason why this is all being done? Because then the more dollars channel through the government and the few people that are controlling that, so then they have access and the ability to direct that money as well. So that was a rhetorical why not, Scott. I'm with you, brother. Smaller is better. And no, you're right. It's a step towards socialism. But I honestly think we need to go back. And I thought we started to make a start on it, but it's fizzled out. we've got to go back and dig out the further roots, because socialism doesn't happen in one legislative session. Socialism happens slowly with 1,000 little cuts at a time. But part of that is when someone says, back to the Energy Star, hey, would you spend government money to create this program so that I can sell my product for more? That's not small government either.
Yeah, that like there's no doubt in the history of like the way that this whole system is set up right now, that corporations are able to essentially get handouts from the government that benefit the corporations. The whole system is predicated on this, which is why the corporations actually fund all of the politicians. That's why we have things like the Citizen United case that allows them to do this. They actually created the legal architecture to allow themselves to funnel money to the government and then get kickbacks inside of legislation that allows them, that basically hands them money, right? To be able to, oil companies have done this. This is now like energy and real estate sector that we're talking about now. It's fundamental the way that the U.S. economy is actually like predicated on working. That's why a lot of people will talk about it and say, well, we're trying to figure out what is really real about the way the economy works and the way that the political system works, and says, well, if you scratch too far below the surface, as Dave is getting into, you might find out that it's actually a corporatocracy, that all there ever was is like a few companies and power holds that control most of the money that ends up flowing through to be able to get the kickbacks that they want to into the right spaces for their own business interests. Right.
And with that, we just entered the matrix. Scary, isn't it?
I don't think it's so far down. I think it's actually just one scratch below the surface.
Follow the money.
Because if that's that right, if you just said one little rule is like, do you believe people are motivated by how much money they make in America? At whatever level of wealth they are, they seem to be pretty freaking motivated by how much money they're going to make, right? Say, great. And if you were in this position and you were trying to make as much money as you possibly could, what would you do given this layout? And anybody would be like, oh yeah, well, I would just give the money to this guy, so he'll give me back a bunch of money. Like, it's not that complicated.
No.
And you don't even need collusion. Like, there's a whole thing about like, people are like, it's like, what about the conspiracy? And I was like, you don't need, like George Carlin said it best, you don't actually need people talking to each other to collude as long as all of their interests aligned. You don't need a big meeting. All you have to do is have the same playing field and everybody comes to the same conclusion and says, yeah, we'll go do that.
Yeah. George Carlin.
I know. I miss that bastard.
he knew how to poke the bear.
Yeah, dude, he was great.
So what do you guys think about privatizing Energy Star? I mean, commercial real estate developers could just put some money behind a privatized version of that if it's benefiting them, right?
I think privatize it. I don't think you actually need as many, like nearly as many like public national goods stuff, like at all. Like why have this stuff be subsidized?
Yeah, I mean, privatization sometimes is a misnomer. Look at Moody's. Moody's was a supposedly private rating company, but yet they were totally in bed with the investment banks all the way up to the federal government. So they were the ones that were rating all of that junk bonds and the mortgage-backed securities in 2007 as AAA. So buyer beware, or do we just maybe let the market play out? That's a tough one.
There's a balance in here, right, Dave, about like that people are actually pretty uneducated. Right?
That comes back to that, doesn't it?
Right?
Yeah.
Is that like we live like in a culture or a society? I mean, I'm running into like, I keep bringing this up to me because it's mind blowing about like how we cannot assume that because people are making a lot of money or have a lot of money or successful in their careers, that they have a freaking clue about how all the other stuff works. Right? That they know this segment, but it doesn't mean they're actually that skilled in the rest of it, So I think the problem that we're running into is that your people are fairly uneducated. There's no real desire to get super educated. A lot of everything seems to be way complicated for anybody to stay on top of it. How do you even know what to pay attention to? And then after all of that, like, how do you even know what's real, or not even like saying like relative realness? What about if that's just slanted and they omitted facts, which is the majority of all of the news that we get from any major outlet, unless you're looking at competitive information sources about what it is and who's doing that much work, really, right? So, I mean, there's a place in here too where it's like, well, we need something that's going to make our lives easy about not having to consume tons of amounts of information all of the time, just so that we don't get bit. I don't want to live like that, you know? And at the same time, you know, I also don't want it like where I got, you know, the strong hand of like government coming in to create so many like regulations and programs and whatnot that just turn out to be overly cumbersome, i.e. the what we just talked about with like the Native American artifacts, right?
Right. You know, when the snake oil salesman rolled his wagon into town in the 1800s, he didn't last very long because he had to perform in front of the people. He was living there. They knew him. Now, what did he do? Then when they rode him out of town, he went to another town. But at least they got to see him. That's that level of education. If we can look behind the curtain that far, and I don't know what the answer is, but Scott, you're absolutely right. But if we can educate that much so that we can recognize and then let the free markets do what they do, bad actors are not going to last. But as long as they're protected in this whole layer upon layer of secrecy, that some of which is government sponsored, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Well, hey, let's go to the next article. I've been waiting for this one from The Guardian. Trump signs order to allow crypto and real estate investments in retirement plans. Woo-wee.
You know, first of all, from The Guardian, really? We're going to pull that as our source of integrity? Scott, you deal with the retirement accounts all the time. What do you think about that?
Well, we were already able to do investments in crypto and real estate with inside of 401ks.
Self-directed, yeah.
Yeah, with like solo 401ks and stuff like that, right? And like people, we set those up all the time for people to be able to manage those types of investments directly on real estate, invest in REITs, do whatever they want to, and push money into crypto. So, here, like, what does this really change, right? I think it makes it really where it's like more likely what this is actually really allowing to happen is that the financial advisors that are dealing with people are going to be able to recommend those assets.
Right. And that's huge.
And that'll make a monster difference. Right. And how they're going to, I think that's where you'll end up like a ton of asset flow. I mean, honestly, like ever since the one thing I know is you got more cash flowing into a direction that increases market prices, right? Simple, like supply and demand. So, I mean, whatever my underlying feelings are about certain asset classes, sometimes I just like don't care. I'm just like, that's great. I'm going to buy a bunch of Bitcoin and Ethereum because they're top 3 on crypto. If we have this much money that'll likely be flowing into that sector, that sounds awesome. Especially when we like look at underlying fundamentals, like the dollar slipping as like the world reserve currency, right? Which tells us like the weakening dollar is actually going to be a big problem for people as like a storehouse of wealth. Like according to some projections, when you look at a combined inflation plus the dollar weakening, and this is, I'm talking about like today, right? Where we're saying like that's about an 8% loss of value of how strong your dollar is in terms of purchasing power inside of a year. We haven't even hit what's going to happen when all of the Trump's tariffs kick in. When all of the tariff stuff actually really starts to come into sway here in the next few months, like you can clip me out for this as like my grand prediction. You're going to have people freaking out about like what is actually happening to the price of goods. And then and then where are people going to go to, right? If they see the weakening dollar as a storehouse of value, then all of a sudden they're saying, well, I'm going to store my money inside of crypto because crypto isn't going to have the same type of weakening dollar issue that we're having on that front, because it's not just inflation. It's also the relative purchasing power of the dollar internationally. And that's the piece that I don't think anybody is talking about. That is really the big one.
There's a lot. Oh, go ahead, Dave.
Well, I was just going to say, Scott's absolutely right. We've always had the ability to invest in these assets in certain qualified retirement accounts.
Yep.
Those typical requirement accounts, I'm going to venture out on a limb and make a generalization, were held and opened by more sophisticated investors.
Yep.
Folks that had an understanding of what was possible, then they reached out to learn how to do it, and then they performed it. All this bill is going to do is open the door for who? The unsophisticated to invest in things they don't understand. And yeah, I love my financial advisor. I love financial advisors, but I always recognize they advise because they get paid. And my worry, my absolute fear is that we are going to see a nation's generational wealth disappear because of bad advice from financial advisors, putting people into things that they shouldn't be in, either because they're paid or because they don't understand them.
Right.
And let me take that one more step. And the other bad event is going to be that when that happens, all of those unsophisticated investors are going to say, well, it wasn't my fault. That advisor should have advised me. And then we're going to see the lawsuits start to happen, which was why all of this framework of the sophisticated and accredited investor came about.
Yeah.
Because that's going to start to happen. Well, when that happens, what's Fidelity going to do? And all the other big firms, they're going to rein in their salesmen. They're going to say, you are not allowed. So I really kind of question whether this is going to do anything.
So you think like a Fidelity will kind of self-police, like their brand new financial planners might be like limited, like, okay, you guys don't know what you're doing. Maybe they'll have specialists that do know more about crypto or real estate.
Well, even now, they've all got senior analyst teams.
Sure.
You're not allowed to recommend something inside a firm unless that's been vetted by their analyst.
Yep.
So right there's already a limiting factor on that. Will they try to expand that? Sure. But I think they're going to be incredibly slow and incredibly conservative because the potential backlash from, remember, it's not that long ago how many people started suing for predatory mortgage issues. So this has the potential to be the exact same thing. You should not have allowed me to invest in that.
Yeah. Yeah, this is interesting. One of our investors in one of our real estate deals, rent-own investing deals, came to me. He's a friend of mine, and he's got a whole team of financial planners. And when I said, hey, I've got this opportunity, you want to invest? He's like, well, it sounds great, but let me run it by my financial planner team. And I was like, well, that's going to get killed because they can't recommend real estate and they don't make money off of it. So then he came back to me, and then he's like, yeah, they're all about it. They said, go for it. But also they, as financial planners, they couldn't recommend real estate, but they are investors themselves. They get the power of it. And they had done some deals with my friend. And so he had enough money where like they're still making their money, and they said, go for it. So he's been our biggest investor, actually, multiple deals. So
living in the world of the 1031 exchange, this happens all the time. Someone's getting ready to sell a piece of property and there's a substantial tax bill. Well, they can save that tax and add that to their return if they want, doing a 1031 exchange.
Yep.
But they'll talk to their financial advisor and they'll say, Not just sell it and pay the tax. I can make you more in the market.
Yeah, of course. All of the money. They have their motivations, right? Yeah. You probably deal with that all the time, huh? Interesting. Anything else you guys wanted to add to that before we go to our next?
I'm good on that one.
All right, cool. From BuzzFeed via Yahoo Finance, this frustrated real estate agent's rant about the real cause of the housing crisis is so spot on. Zachary Faust, Delaware agent, turned a viral TikTok voice, delivered a fiery rant about the housing crisis, arguing that decades of policy shifts, Wall Street power, and institutional investors have overpriced ordinary Americans out of home ownership. I guess I didn't watch that video, but it sounds like he really did go on a rant.
I mean, I feel like it's like I'm curious about what's really happening with this, right? Because you find that there's the major institutional buyers are the ones that are scooping up like all of the housing and making it where it's now unaffordable, right? So so they're buying up huge tranches of underlying assets, and you got to ask yourself like why, right?
Yeah.
Like why? And a lot of it seems to have to do with some of the potentially some of the tax advantages that they get from owning the real estate are really attractive to them.
Yep.
But the flip side of it is if you have institutional investors that are scooping up a lot of those houses too, it also helps stabilize what would otherwise potentially be like a distressed housing market, right? Like that the institutional investors are paying higher prices than the alternative, which would be like what the younger people could afford. So what does that actually equate to is that you have an artificially inflated housing price. So the net result of that is actually you have the appearance of a stronger economy because you end up having because of what's happening there, right? So, there's something to be said for that too. Is like what is the interplay that's really going on behind the scenes here between big corporations and governments, potentially all laden around like tax benefits. The government says, "Cool, we'll create this tax incentive, so you corporations will then come through and then buy up all of the housing, so that way it'll give us appearance of a stronger economy, because if we look like we have a weaker economy, our administration isn't doing so good." And so we want that kind of stability.
But on a micro level, though, all of those same benefits are available to Main Street.
Yep.
They're available to mom and pop that have 2 rentals. And actually, I think we're seeing a lot of that percentage. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but a much larger percentage than you would think are investors with fewer than 50 homes.
Yeah, I actually looked that up because I'd heard that before. So 27% of the homes sold in Q1 were to investors. But when you break it down, 20% are mom and pop Main Street investors. Like you said, have just a couple. Only 2 to 4% are the institutional investors. So it's not the Black Rocks that are just like taking over, that's a pretty small percentage.
Yeah. And here's why, because there's always going to be a come and go, a give and take. We get the tax benefits now, but when they sell, those tax benefits are recaptured. And when those are recaptured, that's going to generate. And so I've seen this in the aircraft industry as well. And the accountants get involved and they say, we need to stop owning assets. Let's lease the planes. And somebody else says, fine, I'll buy the planes and I'll lease them to you. And a few years later, those same accountants say, we need more tax write-offs. Let's start buying the planes instead of leasing them. It's going to be an ebb and a flow there. But what interested me about this guy, and I didn't listen to it, I just read the transcript, but a lot of what he's complaining about is stuff that just happens in a market. And if you're not prepared, you can't take advantage of it. There was a huge complaint. He said, people can't afford to buy a house without co-housing. Now, I don't know about you guys. I'm the old guy in the room. But 40 years ago, If I wanted to buy a house coming out of college, I had to take a roommate.
Sure.
That just is what it is. All of a sudden, we've created a narrative where everybody deserves their own house. No, you work your way up to it. You get a roommate in Rent. You get 3 roommates. You kick them out. You buy a house. You get paying roommates. There are ways that you can build yourself up in this economy. Complaining about them and ranting about them isn't one of them.
Yeah. Exactly.
I wonder if like what it is that everybody's really complaining about though is actually like something they feel, but not something they're thinking about. I think because to like elaborate on that, like I think what people are actually feeling is like, why is you got everybody's like grandpa and they're like, and it's like, oh, grandpa, you're a blue collar worker and you could buy a house and raise a family. And all these other young people today are saying like, nope, that's not possible. I can't buy a house and raise a family. Until when? When is everybody able to make enough money so that they can actually go do that? You know, if you start crunching through like how much have real wages effective to prices, have those actually really gone up in the last 30 years? Or has everybody actually systematically been getting poorer? And that's what they're really reacting to is this thing that's happening that says like, well, it looked like in the past, everybody was able to go do this stuff, buy a house, have a job and raise a family. And those opportunities don't look like they're really there and anymore in that same way, right? Where it used to be like, oh, of course, everybody's going to be able to do that. And now it's almost nobody that's younger seems to be able to do that. I'm speaking in gross generalities, of course, but and all I'm really trying to do is just like, is just point like the finger at saying like, you know, this can be about something that's non-logical, but that's felt around what used to be available and how like seems to be a lot among the young people that they like think that a lot of us and people that are older than us, really what we did is we skewed everything to try to make us rich, or maybe this is even the boomers more than it is us. That's cool that like they made it great, but then there's no more opportunity for the rest of us.
I appreciate you saying the boomers and us. Thank you. You know, but you're right, though. Perceived versus reality, it doesn't matter which it is. It's still felt. And there is a vast income gap that has definitely gotten worse and gotten worse. And we exacerbate it with every TikTok that goes out. We emphasize that. Have the fundamentals really changed? Is it no longer? See, I don't know. The old guy in me says there's still ways to do it. And I see young people doing it. But it takes sacrifice. It takes hard work. And honestly, Instagram isn't going to show the hard work that it takes to do something. So I'm real sympathetic too, Scott. I don't know how much of it's real, how much of it's felt, but I know it or is perceived. But it's definitely felt. But does that come back to education again? That's the theme of today's show. Is can we produce education that helps people transition so they can become successful on their own? Or are we simply going to follow the public education system, which was designed to create good factory workers?
Yeah, we like designed a system of education to create good factory workers, and then we shipped off all of our factory workers out to the rest of the world.
Oh my gosh, that's right.
And then,
Did
like,
you know that
we
the
have
whole
like
school bell thing, the whole alarm at every hour, that was to train them so that they would know when their shift was over.
Oh.
I mean, there was a lot of deliberateness that went into this. And now you're right. We don't have any more of those jobs.
Yeah, those like jobs don't exist anymore, you know? So, and like, where is the ability to be like solid, like, you know, this idea that we can then like take all these kids and then make entrepreneurs about them, that they're going to figure stuff out. I work with people every day and like some of like the business coaching stuff that I work with. And these are like smart people, work really hard, struggling like you wouldn't freaking believe, trying to figure out how to make a business work. So that way they can make more money, that they can break out of the wage, because they might be able to say, cool, I can make $50,000 to $60,000 a year, making $25, $30 an hour, right? Which is the majority of people are in like that bracket of under $30 an hour and under, and how much they get paid, right? So like, but at those kinds of wages, if you look at where are people at in terms of real wages, could they actually afford any of the assets to be able to make the life that we think is the good life, which in America is typically saying nuclear family, own your home, have a car. Like, how can I get there? Because that's what our idea of like essentially a good life is, right? Well, can you actually do that on the average wages anymore for most people? No. Okay, well, how about building a business? Building a business is absolutely lights out difficult compared to what these people know how to do and create coming out of the education system that exists, because of all of like the research and the execution and organization, all these skills that never got taught to them, right? They're out there having to figure it out on their own. And so I think that we're in a lot of places, we're in a bad space, because you end up with unskilled people that aren't skilled enough to actually go create new opportunities, which is actually what I'd really love for them to be able to go do, right? And you have an education system that's antiquated, that doesn't serve what the reality is in the inside of the economic marketplace anymore. And then on top of that, like you have like the amount of wages that trickle down from the top 1% whose weight, where all the money is flying to the top of the pyramid. That money doesn't like make it back down to the people at the bottom. Like since like 1979, I was just doing just to pull out some quick numbers. But if we looked at like how things have grown since like 1979, the top 1% real wages and real earnings have increased over 138%. And for the wages for the bottom 90%, so like 90% of the country, real wages since 1979 has only grown 15%. Right. So you end up with this other piece that's happening where most of the wealth is getting consolidated up into the top, which I don't think is actually mind-blowingly wild thing to say of how most people generally believe things are happening. And what you're getting is this level of frustration that's happening with the younger people that are actually saying, I think what they're trying to tell us in these videos is, we don't believe there's a way out. I don't have the education to be successful in what you're doing. I don't believe that if I just go work and I work hard and I do the right things, that I'm actually going to get to where I want to. So how can you possibly tell me that I shouldn't have this dystopian view of what's going on?
Well, and it's hopelessness. That's the word. They're hopeless. They feel hopeless. But the solution to hopelessness is never to simply commiserate and say you're right. The rant does nothing. Instead, let's rant about solutions to that. I love business coaching that you're starting to develop, Scott. Let's start teaching people. Let's not talk about how bad it is in a crazy rant. Let's work with people. Let's find ways to give them hope. I think it can happen.
On a one-on-one scale, dude, I'm with you, right? I'm over here preaching the gospel about let's get after it. Let's go create the lives that we want and whatnot, right? It's like, of course we need to be doing that, right? But I think it's the only point I was trying to get at is like it's I don't even know exactly what the right analogy for this is, but you're whatever is the course of action that you're going to recommend that somebody take, if that's their belief system and worldview, you're asking them to take actions based upon a faith that they have and whoever is telling it to them that life is actually going to get better if they do it. The perception of their worldview, though, is bleak and stark, and it looks like it's systemically like that, right? So most of the time what ends up happening is that people say, I actually don't believe any of what you would say is the normal course of what you think is a reasonable solution to this. Hard work, do your research, put your nose to the grindstone, and then you're going to make it. I say, I don't really believe the reality of that. Like a lot of people try that, and maybe I've tried that, and it actually doesn't work that way for me, and I can't actually get there. And the end result of that, I think, is where you have more and more people that are trying to do like home run stuff. Like, I'll just become an influencer, and it's like, every time I hear somebody talk to me about that, I was like, back in my day, that was everybody trying to say like, oh, I'm just trying to figure out this rap game. I'm going to become a rapper. That's my vision for the future. Because every other course of action seemed unbelievably dark, right? and you only had this one kind of fantasy land that you could play in. And if you talk to the kids these days that are like in that 18, 16 to 25 age bracket, when you talk, or even younger, if you go down to the middle school and you talk to the teachers that are down there, I've been reading articles on this recently, that everybody in those age brackets all believe they're going to make $200,000 a year. And they're all going to do it by being a TikTok influencer or Instagram or YouTube influencer. There's zero connection to how the real world actually like functions, and any ability to think that the real world, the quote unquote real world, is ever going to give you what it is you're really looking for.
Well, I'm going to say it's because the real world is not, that they're exposed to, is not the real world. They're exposed to a media that is very narrowly biased and is only promoting. We talked about this at the very beginning, didn't we, James? Nobody loves good news. Yeah. So what are we going to promote on media? The bad stuff that's happening. So, okay, Scott, you sound so jaded, and I'm so jaded, I'm right with you. But I would say the one thing, if I could do it, would be to grab anybody that I can and shut the phone off for a day and just talk as individuals. Because I don't think the rants are going to help. You can complain all you want, but the idea is let's sit down together and let's see if we can find a way, whether that's in a coffee shop, in a classroom, in some other form of alternative education. But it's face-to-face talk that's going to give people hope.
Yeah, I agree with Dave. I think, Dave, you're 100% right. I think at this point, where things are looking at, the only thing that I found that works at all is actually one-on-one and small group mentorship with people. It comes down to like all of us having to take care of ourselves.
Absolutely.
And then just be like, great. The system is so big and so intertwined at this point. I don't know actually how we even correct course on it. It looks like the way things are playing out are actually just how they play out, and they play out really differently than how anybody ever thought they would play out, right? When everybody voted or whenever they did whatever, right? So all of us are really bad at predicting the future. We're terrible at it, right? So like the only thing that really exists in my mind, and to Dave's point here, is saying like, the only thing that's actually really ever true is that like I as an individual can then go sit with a few other people and help them. And for the sake of just saying like, that's actually the best I'm going to be able to do. Like pick up the starfish that washed up on the shore and chuck it back into the ocean, even though there's a million of them, and just be like, cool, that's just what I'm going to do. And I think, people talk a lot about like the patriarchy and like white men, and as like, here's all like the power and advantages that like white men have. And I can sit with them and I say, look, I 100% agree with you. As a white, well-educated man, I am blessed with tons of advantages inside of like this country and system. And with that, I accept a small amount of responsibility for myself. Not that I put it on anybody else, but for myself, I accept a small amount of that responsibility and say, well, it's my job then to give back, because I've actually been blessed with being able to be in an advantageous position. I wasn't born in an extremely disadvantageous position. I had my own challenges, right? But like I can feel that like inside of myself and say, cool, we should get back. So I'd encourage, to Dave's point, I think we all have an opportunity to be able to say, great, who can I extend mentorship to? And the circle of influence that I have, and say, that's what I can actually do. And that's what's actually real.
Here.
Love that. Yep. That was good. Let's keep things moving and go to our next article from Fox 2 KTVU. Office vacancies down in San Francisco. Gold rush for commercial real estate. This is vacancies fell below 35%, a return back to pre-pandemic levels. So looking good. And they say part of that is driven by tech companies, cleaner streets in San Francisco. I guess they're cleaning them up, and a surge of AI firms. So that makes sense, right? Like a tech-heavy area, just taking it to the next level with AI.
So here's my question. Do you think that this news bit is a trailing or a leading indicator of what's happening in the dot-com economy? Because we're hearing on the street, there's a dot-com bubble everywhere, right? Mm-hmm. But we're seeing it not play out in terms of staffing levels and on-site work levels within that industry. So is San Francisco showing us what's going to happen? Or is San Francisco doing that while the emperor has no clothes?
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, it talking about in the article here too, that a lot of this is because of like AI firms that are driving like the surge in leasing, right?
Yeah.
And like a boost in foot traffic.
Yeah.
So like there could be like a boost in foot traffic just because of like tourism and events. And I mean, AI firms glowing up could be great, but it also could be burst, just like we had .com bubbles bursting up. But I think it also referenced in here too that you're only seeing that this surge is actually happening where we have like high tech infrastructure. So legacy and old infrastructure is not getting the benefit of that. I would say to Dave's point, I think it's a leading indicator of how you'll see more and more commercial buildings that will be needing to outfit for much higher tech infrastructure to be leasable in the future, as we have growing needs for what essentially is going to be like the same model that we're starting to see play out in San Francisco, but will likely eventually trickle out to all of the other tech cities across the U.S.
Yeah, they'll just be doing it without an Energy Star rating. Oh, well.
How will we ever survive without that?
It's beautiful. You see these things, and it just reminds you that real estate is absolutely cyclical. I can't time when it's going to happen, but I can tell you exactly what's going to happen. And this is something that's come around. San Francisco exited and followed that guy named Elon to Austin, and now it's coming back. And every sector's got its time and its place. And I think my takeaway from that article is we're starting to see transition in commercial real estate and sectors. And I love your thoughts, Scott, about finding purposeful buildings that can be upgraded to accommodate the increasing powerful tech structure that they'll need. That could be the next value add project sector.
I mean, we got to think that we're going to need to hopefully we can actually get really serious about that, like as a country. You have like China, for example, has significantly outpaced us in their ability for energy infrastructure as well as AI computing, right? So they seem to be on the fundamentals of things. They seem to be pretty far ahead of us there. So we really need to take it seriously. Hopefully we can get focused, on that, but like AI should be displacing much of like the existent and the establishment media power in our country. And, you start looking at, what are things going to happen that are going to be able to increase like our efficiencies around even like going to McDonald's. I had a friend of mine that owns like a bunch of McDonald's franchises, and he had 55 employees and he let go of 50 of them. Went with the installation of the AI architecture that he was able to put in place. So it's massively disrupting, and unless we get really serious about embracing how disrupting it's going to be and putting the infrastructure in place to do that, it will only mean the more we resist that other countries will outpace us, that are more ruthless about saying we're going to eat the pain. We need to eat the pain of change.
I'd be interested to see what he did with that McDonald's franchise. I know they put kiosks in a lot of these, but as far as AI, be interesting to.
Yeah, you can. There are even like AI, like in machine ready food prep. I mean, it's wild. It's so much more than just even the order taking and stuff that's going on right now.
Yeah.
So like a way that a lot of the stuff is scaling is that it seems to be that AI actually it's not fully displacing workforces. What it is like it's saying like we're going to take like the top 10% of your workforce and we'll make them superhuman to the extent that it can displace the rest of your workforce that actually was less efficient and less effective, right? So hypothetically, what you should be able to do is have people more focus into their zone of genius, so that way they fit into that top 10%, and then those people are then greater empowered by AI tools, but it's never fully AI. AI is only scaling in the capabilities like of a person that's providing oversight, because the AIs are actually kind of crazy right now. They'll just make up facts, make up citations, they'll make up shit. So you actually need human oversight in there to check and verify.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually got a call the other day from a potential client saying, I read this on ChatGPT. And I said, well, it's wrong. Well, but it was on ChatGPT. And I actually went and traced it back and found the source article that had written that. Anytime all you're doing is accumulating a body of information, there's still going to be the opportunity for fallacies inside of that. It's going to get better, but we have to realize it's not the be all end all now. And we've all seen the robot fail videos. Those are kind of fun.
Yeah, those are pretty good. I actually think it's worse than that though too, Dave. I think it's worse than like an aggregation of data being put into ChatGPT. My understanding of if you look at like the most recent release, that what they specifically like highlighted in the most recent release is what they would call as like they have several different terms they'll use for it, but what they'll essentially say is that it's AI hallucinations. So the AI will actually hallucinate data and will hallucinate sources and will actually mischaracterize information, right? Yeah. So what that means is that it's not just aggregated data that's being pulled together and maybe the source was wrong. There's whole opportunities in here for the AI systems to actually just fabricate information that fills the narrative that the AI is trying to create. And so it's much, much worse. And everybody who I'm talking to, like you, Dave, will cite ChatGPT as if it's a source, right?
Yes.
So until we can get to a place, and this problem, I think, is one that we're going to actually have as an increasingly difficult problem, because what we should be running into is that ChatGPT is hallucinating information. So we'd say, well, cool. Now we can't really believe our AI structures. Now we say, well, cool. Well, how can we actually get back to the source material, knowing if the source material itself was actually accurate, even if I did look at the source? Because now images, videos, and content are now also being produced by like AI systems. So now I'm shaky about, even if I did the thing that we're saying is the good thing to do, how will I even know that information is accurate and true and like was an article or research generated contemporaneously with the events that I can even rely on it. And what I see happening right now is we're actually starting to see this more and more with assets, but also with just pure information, that we're now starting to encode information into blockchains. And it's only because the information is encoded into a blockchain that we can know that it's actually true. So what that looks like is saying that like you see this in like intellectual property cases right now inside of the law, but we'll start seeing this more and more as it's becoming more expansive. As that says, well, how do you know this image was actually your image? He says, well, because I encoded into the blockchain 5 years ago. Otherwise, we'd have no idea about how to corroborate in a digital era that image when it was created, et cetera, because all of that could have been fabricated, except for the fact that it's located on a blockchain. So contracts, assets, and information, we should all expect to be all blockchain related moving forward, and to actually say we have reliable information. So the just to bring it all back full circle.
Yeah.
Well, you guys went to college when Wikipedia was specifically prohibited as a source for papers, right?
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you could never, if you're writing a scholarly paper, you could not use Wikipedia as a source. I think we've just evolved to the next transition. People are saying you can't trust ChatGPT. Now, I don't know that you can trust Wikipedia still anymore, but there's evolutions. And we just have to keep our eyes on those. That's really interesting about blockchain for intellectual property.
Yeah, even real estate and everything like that. Like I think you'll start to see all of it, everything will shift to blockchain chain transactions with smart contracts. like over time, right?
Oh.
So that we're still all trying to figure out like how to make all of that happen. But I think it's going to be really disruptive. We can't stop. Like the power of the technology will start to push things fast enough where you should expect huge amounts of displacement.
Yeah. Antonio put in the chat quote from the gal at OpenAI. GPT-5 has been trained to recognize when a task can't be finished, avoid speculation, and can explain limitations more clearly, which reduces unsupported claims compared to our prior models. So
yeah, they'll continue to do that, right? But I think that because it's a language-based like model on the way that it's like set up, I think you'll fundamentally have these kinds of problems. I don't know if they'll be able to totally eliminate them at any point.
Yeah.
But that's what they say. It's like, well, we can reduce unsupported claims compared to the prior models. It's like, I can't absolutely eliminate them.
No.
You know?
Thinkers in the dam.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's take a break for our next partner. We'll come back.
Are you looking to elevate your business through exceptional content? Universe Media Publishing is your gateway to success. We understand that in the world of business, content is king, but not just any content. Your business deserves content that captivates, convinces, and converts your audience into clients. At Universe Media Publishing, we specialize in crafting SEO-rich web content, persuasive copywriting, and marketing copy that resonates with your audience. We don't just write, we engage, we connect, and we deliver results. Imagine your brand's voice amplified, your message crystal clear, and your presence dominating the digital landscape. That's the power of partnering with Universe Media Publishing. Don't let your business just blend in. Stand out, be heard, and make an impact. Connect with us at Universe Media Publishing, and let's turn your vision into reality. Visit universemediapublishing.com today. Your story, our expertise, together, we'll create magic.
Okay, back to the show. Our final section from Yahoo Sports. Shohei Ohtani agent sued after allegedly sabotaging $240 million real estate project in Hawaii. This is Los Angeles Dodgers star Shohei, I guess that's how you say it, Ohtani, and his agent, Nez Balelo, are facing a lawsuit from developer Kevin Hayes and broker Tomoko Matsumoto, who claimed they were forced out of a $240 million Hawaii luxury project due to escalating demands and alleged threats from Balelo. So they were using his celebrity to, I guess, attract investors is my take on that. And then they tried to push him out. Is that what you guys read out of that?
He's a heck of a ball player. That's where I stop.
Yeah.
I don't have a clue what's going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like if you're like investing around celebrities, like what do you expect? You know?
Yeah. What does he have anything to do with the real estate, right? It's just a face, right?
Yeah. I mean, he's just out there trying to play ball and live his life, man. So,
Yeah. Well, let's go to our next one from Business Insider. Why hedge fund icon Ray Dalio says you shouldn't invest in real estate in this economy. He said he's warning investors to stay away, citing high interest rates, heavy taxation, and the illiquidity of property assets. We already know that that's part of real estate.
Sometimes that's the best part of real estate because you can't access the candy box.
Right, that's a good point.
I don't know. There's been several really, really prominent big players that have all said that same thing. You should never own a house. And I'm not even going to mention who they are. We know. But it's funny how every one of those people still invest in real estate.
Yeah.
And I guess my take on this, one of my mentors a long time ago reminded me that there's only two classes of people that have always ruled the world. And the first one is the banker, and the second is the landowner.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to be one or the other. And in my mind, there is never a bad time to own real estate. There's only bad ways to buy real estate. and bad timing to do it. But if all you do in America is buy a house and rent out the basement and raise your family in the top story, and then sell that and take that profit tax-free and do that 4 or 5 times in your life, you will have made a very good living. And that's what the tax code lets you do.
Yeah.
At the very least. Heavy taxation, I don't know, last time I looked, real estate taxes, they're going up marginally, but there's also a new movement on the horizon, and Florida is leading that to reduce real estate taxation at the state level and turn it more into a consumption tax that's more equitable for who's doing it. So I don't know. When somebody says don't do this, I always look at their motives and say, why are you telling me that?
Yeah. So he advises hedging portfolios, diversifying assets, and allocating up to 15% in gold or Bitcoin. I'd say, and also real estate. Like, yeah, diversify. Sure, get into all those, but don't just eliminate real estate. Would you agree?
I mean, I think like owning more real stuff is what I always tell people. Like, try to get to something that's going to be like own more real things.
Yeah.
Like that you own more real things that provide value that you don't ever have to be forced into selling. You know, like it's probably not even the people that are like, even, you know, us or the people that are listening to this that like need to hear that message, you know, because like it's so many of the people that have so much of their wealth like tied up into the stock market. And it's like, well, what? You have like a super inflated stock market because everybody has all of their, you know, 401ks and their retirement plans are invested inside of index funds, right? So they have so much money that's pushed inside of index funds and into direct investment into markets. Those kinds of capital flows mean that you end up with it's just the economic pressure of having that much dollars, you know, flow into those markets. And I mean, with I'd say if you can get your money, I'd advise everybody to get your money out of soft markets and start owning more like hard stuff, like gold, Bitcoin. I agree with Mr. Dalio there, right? So things like going in, like finding the right buy on real estate that like cash flows, especially in you know, class like B properties, you know, stuff that's going to weather economic, you know, issues like that. That's a great thing to have as well too. But directly owning more real stuff that's outside of just fictitious market numbers.
Absolutely. And take that one step further. I think the real issue that's hampering people buying real estate today, it's said time after time after time, interest rates are too high. Well, if that's the barrier, find ways to buy real estate with less leverage. I went through the 2008 crisis with a bunch of clients. We just call it the bad time. None of them who were not leveraged too high, none of them that did not have to sell real estate to survive went out of business.
Yep.
And today they're worth multiples over what they were. Those who were over leveraged all went out of business.
Yep.
Every one of them. And that's the lesson for us there. What happens though, further to your point, Scott, is that it's easy to invest in those index funds because I can just do it with my cash. So the cash goes in and it sits. So I'm not really tempted unless I got a margin account or something to get too crazy with it. With real estate, there is the leverage component that's there. And you've got to manage that. You got to be respectful and fearful of it. But I don't think it has to stop you from investing in real estate.
Right? Leverage is a beautiful thing and it can turn on you.
Right.
So you just know what you're getting into, right?
Yeah, I mean, I with those people, I'm usually recommending for people saying like try to see if you can get your debt like below 50% of like if you're real estate, if you can get that, then you can pretty much weather any storm as long as you can get like your debt low enough. And that this is like an opportunity to say is I think you can make a bunch of money if you're buying things like if you're buying a Bitcoin, Ethereum, and like what your top 3 like on your crypto. I think those are gonna like go up. Our gold is going to go up as the dollar weakens too. Like we just know things that are happening and are going to happen. They're not reversing course in like a short term like whiplash. And then if you buy real estate, but try to see if you can buy stuff where you're going to have a really low debt service ratio, which means not having a lot of debt. And if you're at 50% or lower in their total amount of debt that you're holding on a piece of property, you're very likely going to be okay about not getting pinched. Like as Dave was saying I have to liquidate because and sell because I just can't cover the debt payments. So
All right. Our next one from Hogan Lovells. President Trump revokes executive order on competition, rejects Biden administration's whole of government approach to antitrust enforcement. It's a mouthful. Biden's order had tasked multiple federal agencies. Man, I cannot talk today. Multiple federal agencies with over 70 initiatives targeting corporate consolidation across industries, aiming to protect workers, consumers, and innovation. And then they announced a new, quote, America First Antitrust, unquote, philosophy emphasizing deregulation, market freedom, and targeted remedies. Yeah. Help me. I can't talk today. Oh my goodness. Any thoughts on that?
Wow. At the same time, we'll do that in exchange for you selling a percentage of your company to the government. You just, with any legislation, I think it was Warren Buffett that said this, with any government legislation or initiative, it's going to be good for some and bad for some. And what you have to do is figure out who it's good for and become one of those people.
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing to say, but the question is like to which people is it helping like right now, like how do I do that? Like what is my path to being able to be one of those people that this type of deregulation helps? Like I can't foresee that. Like this is a handful of people at the top. I think these types of actions, like to me, like are who actually are they helping right now?
I don't think it's deregulation at all. I think that's a misnomer. I think that's smoke and mirrors.
Oh,
I think that in opening the markets up, they're actually regulating them more heavily, just on different levels.
Oh, I see. I thought what
shadow
we're
people.
doing is like allowing more deals to happen to like allow companies to consolidate that otherwise wouldn't be able to because of a regulation.
Well, I think that's what they're doing, but I think
know
it's
what's going on?
creating more regulation inside of that. In other words, that's coming at a price. And what we don't know is what price the federal government is charging for that. Does that make sense?
We don't know what price the government's charging to allow them to merge.
Right. Trump's promoting this as this big, beautiful deregulation bill.
Right.
But I think that it's actually just changing the regulation into something that's more fitting to what he wants to see. I just don't know what that is yet.
Okay. See, I understand these things as saying there's laws either make it more restrictive or less restrictive for businesses to be able to operate. And that way we say, before you weren't able to do this thing, and then say, well, now you are to, that's generally what is referred to as deregulation, is that it only could not have happened because there was a law that said they couldn't do it. And so now they're able to do it, which means it has to be a deregulation. So
it's things like percentage of business, right? It's cross-pollinated boards of directors. It's all of those kinds of things that I think Trump is eliminating in all of those executive orders. But let's say we allow a cross-pollinated board of directors over the percentage that normally would have been allowed. What does that create? I'm just looking further down the road, saying, what does that create that actually gives the federal government the opportunity to create more draconian control of the economy because they're consolidating the economy? I don't know. I'm throwing Orwellian you here at this point.
No, I mean that's funny because I didn't expect you to take that turn with it, Dave, because like that I would say like fundamentally, right? It's a consolidation of power issue, right? That he says like the more we allow companies to consolidate with each other, now more power, more economic power is held into fewer hands, because that's more power goes up to like the top of like a small board that's controlling more, right? So that actually supports like an oligarchical system, and I was saying that's how corporatocracies actually gain more power, and that the people that own the stuff are consolidating power, and and so you end up with like a little bit of that's where I was looking to get to. That says like that those types of deregulations only serve to be able to consolidate power into fewer hands, and that fundamentally is that the problem we think we're having. Is the problems that we think we're having in this country is because that there's not enough power into a few people's hands.
Oh, I'm totally with you on that. Absolutely. What I'm saying is, I think the illustration used of all of these rules exist to funnel power to the top. I'm just saying, I'm not sure I trust the title of this bill to really mean that it's truly going to deregulate. Dude, I bleed as libertarian red as you could imagine. But I'm just not sure that this, quote, deregulation isn't just a fancy, quiet way of still funneling power and control to the top, just a different top.
Yeah, which top? I mean,
which top? Exactly.
Yeah, which top is getting more power? I mean, it seems to me, I mean, I don't know if you guys have a hot take on this or whatever, but it seems to me like if we look at what are the moves that Trump has made, or this administration, I don't necessarily know it's necessarily all Trump, right? But at least in the administration, that like what is that you see consolidation of power inside of both areas. That Trump is consolidating like a ton of political power and exerting much bigger reaches inside of like what is the executive authority, which is, i.e., why is there so many court cases? This is because he's pushing on like what are the limits of the executive authority that he can use to expand the power of the executive. And that also it's who are the, what is the other leg of the stool, right? It's the people that have the money, right? The oligarchs still have power. And so I think you probably have both hands like washing the other. The oligarchs will say, we will support you and you doing what you want to do, like over here, Mr. President. But we need you to make it where we're going to be able to do the type of work that we're going to try, that we want to do over here, that's going to allow us to consolidate more power and make more money and control more of the monopoly. And that there is no real adversarial relationship. It's actually like a small club where people are cutting deals with each other.
Yeah. And I don't disagree with doing this. Because I think we are really, honestly, I think we should be in a nation where if you want to create a law, you got to get rid of two. It's just, that's really where I come from. But I'm just concerned that this is really more about smoke and mirrors and a consolidation of power in a different vein. And the laws of unintended consequences I don't know where it could come from. But these are the kinds of things we should approach very trepidatiously.
Yeah.
Good stuff, guys. You guys are awesome. Let's hit our last article before the extra fun one. From Yale Insights, DOGE's lease cancellations are already hitting the commercial real estate market. This is DOGE triggered the largest wave of federal lease cancellations in U.S. history. Once considered among the safest investments, government leases are now viewed as risky after DOGE terminated hundreds of contracts. So in Washington, D.C. alone could lose $575 million in property value and $50 million in tax revenue over 5 years. So are you guys in commercial real estate in any capacity?
Yeah, I do some self-storage stuff and like apartments. I do like apartments and self-storage.
Okay, but no like commercial, like office buildings,
like office space stuff.
That stuff, not anymore. No.
Like it. Yeah. I didn't see this one coming though. I don't think anybody did. But I think like what this story to me is only really interesting to the extent that it's really getting at to the fundamental points about saying like you can't rely on anything that you thought was like bulletproof anymore regarding the government, because the government is like wild carding stuff a lot,
Right.
you know, like they're just YOLOing their way through like how they're going to manage things without whatever the unintended consequences are. That seem to be around like short-term like political points, right? Like who the hell gives a shit about anything that DOGE did? They didn't save enough money for it to actually matter, when you can say like how much debt that we have that we take on all the time anyway. Them going through all of this stuff as like an exercise causes a lot of like downstream like instability. And and it's not even like one thing, right? Like I'm not trying to be like a DOGE hater or like any of or like a Trump administration hater or any of that, right? What I am focused on is saying like what allows us to be able to have stability in markets, right? And the more unpredictable things are in terms of governments, the less stability you end up having. So this is a great example of how like a government interaction can intervention that departs from like a long history of how it normally operates, like disrupts a market. You have the other things I was talking about earlier around like how the U.S. is like downgraded by credit agencies. You have people that are having loss of confidence in the U.S. dollar, which means really like a loss of confidence in like U.S. leadership, right? And where U.S. leadership is, guiding the world, and for them to pivot off of that. And you have more isolationism happening on the U.S. front, which actually means that the world is actually creating relationships with each other that is actually just leaving the United States out. Will eventually leave the U.S. behind. It's not one thing that erodes people's confidence, right? It's a death by 1,000 cuts, right? And that's what this article to me about what happens here on the real estate front is just another slice at people saying like, you know what, I'm really just actually not confident. And one thing we know for sure is that if people start losing confidence in the things they're going to do with their money, is actually when they start to hoard money. Mm-hmm. And that will actually make economies collapse if people start to hoard their cash and not spend it. It's called the velocity of money. And when velocity of money goes down, you have major economic problems that are going to happen. If you combine the problem of people hoarding onto their money with a dollar that is eroding both from inflation, but as well as a weakening dollar in comparison to like global currencies for the ability to acquire global goods, on top of the increase in tariffs, now you have a massive problem. Because the problem you're going to run into is that people can't afford to buy the things they want to buy. They're scared to do anything with the money that they do have, and they've lost confidence in what to do next. At all. And so this can be like a recipe for what could be systemic problems. And that's why like over and over again, I'm like, you need to take your money, take it now, get out of dollars, get into hard assets. And because the world is actually in a pretty shaky situation. So it's a good time to hunker down a little bit.
Yeah. Going back to that Ray Dalio stance, I have a lot of respect for him. I'm surprised he says just like no real estate. He's smart enough to know that it's a hard asset. It's got value.
I think a lot of this stuff too is we got to take a tongue in cheek about what any of these guys are saying, is because like a statement like that, like no real estate's stupid. Like that's something dumb people say, right? In the financial and investment world. To ever say a whole asset class is no good really is just an incredibly unsophisticated view. Do we really believe Ray Dalio has that kind of a view about real estate? Or is it just the way that marketing messages have to get told to be able to tell a story? And so we have to be smart about what we know to be true, and then listening to other people and say, how does that inform what I know is more likely true versus saying that so-and-so is right based upon an article.
Or the headline for an article, which was just the clickbait that got you there. Perhaps they're right. The context is, anytime we go into an asset, just as people, and we invest, we expect that to last forever. We want it to last forever. Because why? Investing, underwriting, vetting, figuring out where to place our money takes work. And so anytime we go into it, we want that to be the best and lasting thing. I heard this in 2005 all the time. The market has changed. It's never going to be the same. It's never coming down, because they wanted to believe that, because it was an easy way to invest in real estate. Here we are 20 years later. Guess what? All I'm seeing is that this article, the DOGE thing, it all just illustrates that no matter what it is, investing in anything is cyclical. It will have highs, it will have lows, it will have better times to invest in, better times to exit. And if you're simply throwing your money at the dartboard and then saying, that's it, it's going to be good forever, you're going to be sadly mistaken. I mean, and I'm sitting here thinking, okay, well, my wheels are turning. If a chunk of Washington, D.C., which is very close to all those seats of power, is going to be vacant, Scott, James, let's go grab a couple old post office plants and let's upgrade them and let's turn them into AI research facilities. There's going to be opportunities that'll come. There's always losers. There's always winners.
Yep.
Yeah, that's why you can never say like just no real estate, right?
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah. All right, let's go to our fun news item, final news item. CNET, 11 things you shouldn't use ChatGPT for and why you'll regret it.
Yeah, this one is like one of those things that I think like going back to some of the stuff that we were actually talking about earlier. But my viewpoint on this is like, of course, in line with the article about, not relying on it, especially for like legal, medical, or financial things. I'm saying like, okay, this was going to tell you. I actually like to talk to people now about just saying like, just assume that anything you're getting off of AI is wrong, right? But it can help you get to the 80% of rightness, And then from there, you need to take it over and like do the work to get it from like 80% to like 100, but never to assume that never look at it as if it's right. That I think that gets us to a big trap that people are wanting to be lazy and right, and that never works. It can get you fast having it'll expedite your research, but it's not your research.
Yeah.
If it's a matter of the heart or relationship, don't touch it. Relationships are supposed to be messy and inconvenient, and ChatGPT will never help you get to that kind of level.
Yeah. True. It's like posting on like Reddit. It's like, am I overreacting? There's like threads inside of like Reddit where it's like, am I overreacting to like XYZ thing like my partner did? And the first in there is like a detailed, like point by point about why you should break up. It will like the Reddit community will always tell you about why you should leave your wife or like opposite, right? And like in ChatGPT, what I found is that it's always trying to be my best friend. It's trying to like promote engagement by always trying to tell me that I'm right and I'm brilliant and here's all the reasons why this is a good idea and blah, blah, blah. I even saw like on the South Park episode that like the episode 3 that just aired, they even had one in there too that was like, tell me about how to make a salad out of French fries. And it's like, that's a brilliant idea. What a fusion of a concept. This brings like with the savoriness with the healthiness that everybody's actually looking for. They're like, oh my God. And it's like, it really is like that. Like no matter what you tell it, its job is to make you actually enjoy interacting with it. Its job is not actually to help you get any better. Right? Like that's it. It's like food. Like the restaurant's job isn't to make you healthy. The restaurant's job is to make you addicted to the food. The fact that you're fat actually is nothing that anybody cares about except for you. That was nobody else's job. Their job was actually just to get you to eat the food. ChatGPT's job is just to get you to continue to use it.
Good point. Interesting times with AI.
But I do say like with that though, is that I find a ton of value using AI and helping me just get throw a bunch of crap up on the wall.
Oh yeah.
Like I'm looking for 10. My wife is pissed off at me. What are 10 things that I could do that would help her get unmad at me so that way I can get laid tonight. It's going to be brilliant at that. It'll give you at least 10 things. You pick 2 of them. It might work, which is a heck of a lot better than your buddy who's over there being like, I don't know, dude, why don't you just crack a beer and hang out in the garage and let it blow over? It's relative forms of like, what advice are you going to go to? And so for those things, I'm like, probably ChatGPT might be better.
Yeah, I tend to think that these things just make us lazy. I literally got a text from my son the other day who lives with me. We text because that's more convenient, right? Want to go to a movie tonight. Father, I appreciate our relationship so much. I've looked at my calendar and unfortunately I will not be able to join you. Please feel free to reach out to me again in the future if my calendar is more conducive. Yes, I busted him on it. Did you use ChatGPT for that? Maybe.
That's awesome.
Was our relationship enhanced? I think not.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. Oh my goodness. Well, guys, that covers the news portion of the show for this month. I'd like to thank our sponsors, United States Real Estate Investor Advertising, Accelerated Capital at acceleratemycapital.com, and Universe Media Publishing at universemediapublishing.com. And of course, thanks to you guys, our awesome guests. Great to have you both back, Dave Foster, Scott Royal Smith. Why don't you let people know how they can connect with you? We'll start with Dave.
Best way to hook up with us is simply go to the1031investor.com. All things 1031 exchange if you're interested in not paying tax on real estate transactions.
Beautiful.
Yeah, you can reach out to me and my company at royallegalsolutions.com. And that's for anybody who's, household incomes that are typically over 300K. People are paying more than $100,000 a year in tax. We typically are able to save people $30,000 plus in their first year with advanced tax strategies and tax shelters.
Fantastic. Thanks, guys. Again, I'm your host, James Brown. Feel free to connect with me by going to Linktree/partner with James Brown. And if you want help on your investing journey, book time with me to see how we can work together by going to jamesbrownrealestate.com/coaching. Also, huge thanks, as always, to our founder and producer, Antonio Holman with United States Real Estate Investor. Follow and subscribe to This Month in Real Estate Investing at thismonthinrealestateinvesting.com or your favorite podcast app. If you run across any interesting news, events, or have suggestions for expert guests like we had today, feel free to share by emailing Antonio at unitedstatesrealestateinvestor.com. And remember, when one door closes, another door opens to financial freedom. See you next month.